On this week's coronavirus extraordinary episode of Light and Leeds, Keziah from Mafwa Theatre connected to tell me about the work that she does. She is a theatre maker. She works with Mafwa Theatre, who are a group of women, refugee, asylum seeker and settled Leeds communities. They make theatre and other art forms that reflect the experience of migration to the UK. Have a listen. For this coronavirus extraordinary episode of Light and Leeds, I have Keziah from Mafwa Theatre. Hello, Keziah.
Hello, Hazel. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming along to talk to me. So can you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I am a theatre maker and I work with Mafwa Theatre, who are a group of women from refugee, asylum seeker and settled Leeds communities. We make theatre and other forms of art that speaks about the experience of migration to this country and also the experience of living in multicultural communities that makes Leeds great.
Fabulous. And how did you start off on this road?
So my co-artistic director, Tamsin, and I were doing a master's at the University of Leeds in theatre and global development. And we wanted to work with sanctuary seekers because I, before doing my master's, was working at the Refugee Education Training and Advice Service, RETAS, which is just up in Hare Hills. And I knew that I wanted to start doing more enrichment activities with sanctuary seekers to support English development, like English language skills, etc. And we needed to create a group. So we went to Leeds Refugee Forum, which is based in Lincoln Green, and they wanted to expand their women's provision. So we set up a group for women, and we just had a bit of a laugh with people and did some drama games, and it ended up sort of almost spiraling out of control, but in a nice way. For Refugee Week 2018, we were given the Howard Assembly Room to perform in, really kindly. So we put a short performance on there, and we've just gone from strength to strength, really.
And how do you advertise? How do you get people referred to you? How do you get people involved?
So everything we do in collaboration with community partners. We're really involved in the amazing migrant support sector that exists in Leeds. So the group is open to everyone of any migration status, but we are particularly welcoming to people who have sought sanctuary in the UK. So anyone can join, and we're always open to referrals. And word of mouth really gets around in terms of people joining in.
That's lovely, isn't it? Because that means that, that's a really positive thing if they're going and telling other people what great fun they've had.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really nice way of meeting people's expanded social circles as well.
Yeah. And where does the name come from? Does it have a meaning?
Yeah, so Cecilia, who is one of our longest serving members, who is originally from Cameroon, when we were asking people about what the name should be, because we are totally member and participant led, we got some brilliant ideas. Some of them were not the snappiest. We had the Strong and Powerful Women of LS9 7SG, and we were like, okay. But Cecilia said that we should be called Mafwa, which in Cameroonian pidgin, it refers to a queen or a kind of monarch, a feminine monarch. And we were like, yeah, that is great. So we've gone with that.
That's brilliant. That's a great word, isn't it?
Mm.
And so Cecilia's been coming along for a long time.
Sorry. Yes, Cecilia has been coming since our first session, I believe. She's a local resident of Lincoln Green, and takes part in lots of the English language sessions that Leeds Refugee Forum puts on. And she's really the light of our sessions. At any given opportunity, she will get up and start singing and dancing, and is just always very joyful.
Oh, that's great. And you've sent along a clip of Cecilia singing, which I'll pop on the end of the podcast. And she's just got a lovely voice.
Yeah.
And so how has lockdown and everything that's come with it, how has that affected your work? Have you had to completely change your processes and change a lot of the things that you had scheduled?
Yeah, I think in some ways we've been in a really strong position to react to the crisis because we're a small organisation. We're not a brick and mortar we don't have a brick and mortar premises. We're a tiny team, and we have a really strong connection to Mafwa Theatre members. So we were able to be super flexible and change what we were doing. So originally we were working on this Cooking with Parveen project, which was exploring food. Basically, we were just eating a lot of food and cooking together, and often at the same time. It's okay. I used to be a professional chef, so it's all health and safety guaranteed, but it was a lot of fun. And we were working towards a short performance where we were going to cook on stage and feed the audience. And it was just going to be a really nice celebratory meal with some performances in there. And that was going to be at this year's Refugee Week, which always takes place around the 20th of June, which is the UK's Refugee Day. But obviously we weren't able to do that. So we very quickly turned around. So instead of our regular weekly face-to-face sessions, we knew that we couldn't run sessions online immediately because there are only 2 of the 25 people who we regularly work with who have Wi-Fi, and at least 7 who didn't have at least 7 who didn't have access to devices that could access the internet. So we knew that our focus on online delivery had to be quite long term. So we've spent a lot of time with funding, getting funding from places like 100% Digital Leeds and a Lincoln Green, Bermontoffs and Richmond Hill specific funding pot to deliver smartphones and data to people so that they can access the internet. And we have started tentatively to do online sessions. But instead of focusing on the normal workshops that we would do every week online, we created these postal packs. So we sent out every week a letter that it was small enough to just put in through your letterbox, and it contained a vegetarian recipe that cost under £5 to make, £5 food voucher to go and get the ingredients for that recipe, a bus ticket so that if you needed to, you could go and get them, a few creative tasks. So we would always do one creative task that was outside, walking around and maybe finding 5 things that are green, for example, and creative activities that you could do inside with little to no materials, basically. We ran those for the first 11 weeks of lockdown, and I believe we sent out 366 in total.
That's amazing.
I was the one packing them. It was a lot of work. I had my own little factory going with my gloves and my mask, and it was intense. But yeah, with the support of individual donors who were able to sponsor packs, we were able to get them out to more women than we normally work with. And in those packs, we asked people to write letters, and then they would post them back to us. We had a stamped and addressed envelope in there as well. So it was so nice. Every day in the post, I'd get these letters for Mafwa, and I get to open them up, and they had maybe people's drawings in there, maybe things their kids had made. They might even have letters to someone else. And then we would try to sort of scan them in and then send them out in the following week's pack, because the whole point of what we do is to build resilient communities.
Yeah.
And that's something that COVID has been really difficult, So trying to keep community at that time through the packs has worked quite successfully.
It's such a great idea, and as well, giving people something to do and something to focus on. And like you say, an unexpected bonus is that you're getting to open all of these letters and see what people have been up to. And I bet that was really special for you as well, during lockdown time.
Yeah, it was such a joy. It's so nice to receive stuff in the post as well. I think we really, I say we forget, I'm quite young. It's not like I lived at a time when there weren't emails. But yeah, I think it sort of prompted me to write more letters to family and friends as well.
Yeah, because there's something much more personal, isn't there? I tend to dread getting post because it's either going to be a bill or something that I'm not that interested in getting. But yeah, it must be. I know what you mean. I think it's a lovely way to communicate because it's so much more personal, isn't it? Because somebody has taken the time to write the words down and, like you said, little drawings and things like that. Yeah, what a lovely idea. And did you get much feedback about that part of the project?
Yeah, people loved it. One of the things that we were concerned about is that we work with people with varying levels of English language skills, people who are native speakers or come from Anglophone countries, and people who are illiterate within their own language. and also in English. So we were concerned about putting out packs that wouldn't be understood, and we knew that some people would really struggle. But what we found that was so nice is that for the people who struggled the most, actually their families would be translating for them and would be writing out what they said. And it gave us a really different insight into those people, because there's only a certain amount of communication that we can do. I mean, I speak Arabic and French, so that does, and Tamsin speaks Spanish, and there are loads of people in the group who speak other languages who can translate while we're in a space. But I think someone sort of writing down what this particular recipe means to them through their daughter is just really special.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know that people found it the highlight of their week, just something to get in the post, because it was just an incredibly boring but also equally traumatic and stressful time that we all lived through.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And so when you got these recipes back, so you already had the cookbook idea beforehand, or Cooking with Parveen series. You already had that in mind, and then you used these recipes that you were sent to run the project in a slightly different way.
Yeah, so initially the outcome was going to be a cookbook that would accompany the performance, and we also wanted to get the performance filmed. Obviously, with the performance not happening, we could jiggle the money about a little bit, and we were supported by a number of really fantastic funders. And in the end, we created a mini podcast called With Our Hands. We're going to create a short film with Hope Strickland, which has been filmed and is currently in the editing room, which I'm really excited about, and does not have a title yet. And yes, this recipe book, which I've got the WhatsApp voice note for Julia's surname, so I'm just going to listen to that so I get it right. Is that okay? Yeah, I wasn't far off. It's Zirishti. Okay, so yeah, we're working on a cookbook with designer and illustrator Julia Zirishti, who is based in Glasgow, and who works across all art forms, and it looks stunning. We wanted the recipe book to be something that everyone who contributed to it could be really proud of, but could also be really usable.
Yeah.
Some of the recipes are recipes that we used during the actual in-person sessions from October to February that I worked. So we would have participants come and deliver a whole workshop on a particular recipe. So they're all worked out with weights and they all make sense. Some of the recipes are just things that we scribbled down when we did our weekly phone calls with everyone. We did our weekly well-being checkups. So it's a different approach to a recipe book. It also has poetry and really nice writing about particular recipes and the memories that they spark. And I think it's a really exciting project, and I'm really proud of what we've achieved.
Yeah, it sounds like a fantastic project, and you should be proud of yourself. When you were looking through it, are there recipes that you've tried that you think were fantastic?
Well, Parveen herself, of Cooking with Parveen fame, made a pilau that I think is so tasty. The main problem is that I'm a celiac, so I can't eat a load of food. So, for example, I think because Julia's Polish, the designer, she's put a blueberry pierogi recipe in there, which are small dumplings that are boiled or they can be fried. And I'm like, oh, well, that's really nice for everyone else, but not for me.
Oh.
So that's been a bit sad. But I mean, that's just the life of a celiac, really. I've been trying to do some gluten-free versions of stuff. There's some really nice pasta recipes in there. I think there's like a brown butter gnocchi with maybe butternut squash.
Ooh, lovely.
That I've been trying with some gnocchi that's been delicious and makes me very excited for autumn.
And so you said that you were a cook previously, or you were a chef previously, sorry. Has that sort of helped you lay out the recipes and things like that?
Yeah, totally. So I was a chef until I realised that I really couldn't, as a celiac, be a chef. I was working at Wildcraft Bakery, actually, which is a gluten-free bakery, which I really loved. But I had to stop during my master's because the workload was too much. And I have found that from my work, I've been a kitchen manager and working with volunteers and sort of training people and working to create community recipe books together. It is really there is a line between, like, how do we communicate authentic recipes when a lot of people just make recipes by eye or by weight in their hand or by the feel of a particular amount of peppercorns. And I think this book, we didn't want to stay too strictly along the, like, oh, this is half a teaspoon, this is a tablespoon of this, and then you've got to wait for this until 6 to 8 minutes. Some of the recipes, as I said, are like that, but I like that some of the recipes are very loose because I want people to play with food and not feel scared about messing it up, because I think one of the things that I love most about cooking is that it's a skill that we will use for the rest of our lives and will be constantly developing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep the recipe book loose.
I think that's a really good idea as well, because I suppose I've never really thought of it this way, but the way that I'm used to reading recipes and looking at cookery books is obviously a very sort of Western way of doing it. And obviously if you're including recipes from people all over the world, they'll all have slightly different ways of doing that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we've the recipe book's a combination of like typed up versions of the recipes that we got sent in, and also just what people wrote in their hand. Everything is in English. We have a couple of pages that are in Kurdish Sorani, but almost everything else is in English. But we wanted to get people's handwriting into the book as well, just to see how people quickly scroll. Like, I have a recipe book that I keep just in the corner of my kitchen that I just scribble things in, and they're not precise at all, but it's just like, oh, I made these lamb meatballs last night and they were delicious, and I was like, chucked a couple of courgettes in, grated them, salted them before, bit of mint, bit of lamb, squished them together, chucked them in the oven, done. Did a yogurt sauce with it, delicious. And I wanted the recipe books to feel like people could continue with them.
Yeah.
That they weren't extremely rigid, but they felt like they had a life to them.
And did the podcast With Our Hands, did that come before or after the cookbook idea?
The podcast, I think the podcast came after, because we wanted something during Refugee Week, and we'd been having all of these really interesting conversations with everyone every week. So we still do it now. I'm going to do it this afternoon, but every week we call around everyone to make sure, just to do a well-being check-in, because loads of our members have physical and mental health problems that they struggle with and might need support with, and Tamsin and myself have the social capital to be able to refer them, to know how we can support them in different ways. But we ended up having these amazing conversations about food. And this year's Refugee Week theme was Imagine. And we wanted to respond to that quite creatively. So we started asking people to imagine a world where food was free, because food for most Mafwa members is their biggest expense, and is prohibitive. And there are like cultural, linguistic barriers to accessing that, and thinking about whose food is important, whose food is counted as ethnic, whose food is not, and just a lot of really interesting questions that we wanted to include. So we thought, why not make our lives harder and make a mini podcast, having never delved into the world of podcasts before. But I did a short course IT GCSE in year 10, so I can vaguely work my way around a 2007 version of Audacity, so that's fine.
And did you really enjoy making those podcasts, and did people enjoy getting involved and telling you about their recipes?
Yeah, people just love speaking about food. it's such a great conversation starter. I mean, I'm not that into football for my sins. My whole family is. But I think if you're into football, it's a great conversation starter, and it really like crosses cultures and crosses language barriers. And I think food does the same thing. We all eat it 3, 4, 5 times a
Yeah.
day. And I think food's this really amazing vault of particularly women's labour.
Yeah.
Because obviously women weren't written into history books, and particularly black and brown women weren't. So all that knowledge is kept in the food that we eat today. So it's been really interesting to unearth that, and also just to think about what a world would be like if food was free. Like, how would that work? Would we pay? How would farm labourers get paid, or would farmers get paid? Would it be a subsidy from the government? Are we talking like full out 5-year plan communism here, or are we talking everyone has an allotment, there are urban farms on the top of all the skyscrapers? Just sort of nice utopian thinking, I think, was a really nice change for us all during the sort of worst bits of the pandemic.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And can I ask you, have you always lived in Leeds?
No. You might tell from my accent that I am not from Leeds. I am originally from the borderlands of East London and Essex, and I moved to Leeds in 2015. I did my undergrad in Edinburgh, and I am dating a Geordie, and he was studying in Leeds, and we thought, well, Leeds seems like a good in-between space between Newcastle and London, so let's go for that. I did move to the south of France for 1 year in that time. But yeah, effectively since 2015, I've been here.
Oh, lovely. And so you are qualified to answer my 3 questions that I ask every guest. The first one being, what do you think is great about the city of Leeds?
I love Leeds. Like, it's a very visceral love. Like, I don't know why, but I just really, really love it. I think it's the perfect size for me. I think that I moved around quite a lot, sort of as a young adult. I lived in quite a few countries, learning languages and working and all that stuff. And every city that I moved to, I felt like Leeds instantly was so welcoming. And not on a surface level way, on a much deeper way, of being friendly with colleagues, bumping into people in the street and in the city centre, and then people actually inviting me back to their houses and actually inviting me and really welcoming me in and continuing that.
Yeah.
I like the vibrancy of the city. I feel like there's too much going on for me, which is perfect, but also it's all relatively accessible. I mean, okay, the buses are incredibly expensive. Fine. But I do cycle, which helps. And I only live in Beeston, so getting to the city centre is really easy by bike. Getting out of the city centre and coming home, not so enjoyable. But it's fine. I can always walk.
Yeah, not
up
so
the
easy.
hill. Yeah.
And what would you say is something that you think is not so great about the city?
So yeah, as I've said, the buses are not ideal. And I think that the city centre is somewhat unfriendly. It's very corporate and commercial and also cementy. I really would love to see a city centre that is more vibrant. Like, if you think of all of the like little pockets of community spaces, like in Hare Hills and Headingley, and I was in Horsforth the other day, and all of these nice high streets that have independent stores and have, it's very American, sorry, independent shops, and like community spaces like Oblong in Woodhouse and the West Indian Centre. And I miss that in the city centre. And sometimes it feel a bit like any city centre sometimes. But, after coronavirus, that might change.
Yeah, definitely, because I think a lot of things are probably going to have to change. But yeah, that is definitely two things that I have heard other people say on the podcast. The bus has come up a lot. But yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I would like to see more independent restaurant shops, gift places, things like that, because I agree with you. I don't see the point. If you can go to any city in the UK and it has exactly the same shops selling exactly the same things, I don't see what the point in that is.
Well, I could just go to White Rose if I want that, you know. If I want to go to New Look and Topshop, fine. I can just go to White Rose. But I think also trees and cycle lanes, because the cycle lanes are not sensible, and I would like more trees. These are the things that I would like.
Well, when I become mayor of Leeds, I'll make sure I get those for you.
Oh, please, thank you. That would be great.
If you met somebody who had been a long-term resident of Leeds for a long time, would you be able to tell them about something that you would consider to be a hidden gem that they might never have heard of?
No. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Let me think. Recently, I'm always on a quest to sort of seek out all of the green spaces in Leeds.
Yeah,
that's what I'm really enjoying at the moment. But I've, especially in lockdown, sort of been looking at not like old brown sites that are green spaces, because I know Leeds obviously has loads of official green spaces, but I really like blackberries and I quite like foraging. So I've sort of been exploring more of these old brown sites. So there's a site down sort of at the bottom of Holbeck, very, very close to the M621 that runs through it, or the M62. I do drive, but I'm really bad with road names. Sort of very close to towards Elland Road side of Holbeck, and there's this little field that is just surrounded by cherry trees. It's bordered by cherry trees. So if you go there when it's cherry picking season, it is abundant.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's just an old brown site. I think it had a school on it or something that's recently been taken apart.
Well, I'll have to try and find out where that is, because I live in Beeston myself, and I'm like you, I love foraging. But cherries would be amazing. I don't think I've ever foraged cherries.
Yeah, I mean, you're lucky to get them before the birds do, is what I'd say. But when you do, it's worth it, because you get because they often are quite sour. They're like the small ones. You can make really nice jam out of them.
Oh, wonderful! I'll definitely have to go and have a little explore and see what I can find. And what will you be doing with the rest of your day today?
Today is phone call day. So I am going to be calling all the Mafwa members just to check in and see how they are, to see if anyone needs anything. So food referrals are a bit more tricky now that shielding's ended, but if anyone does need a food referral, then I'll try and find them a local food bank. And then if anyone needs housing support or mental health support, I think most of the Mafwa members are more settled now, so the sort of pastoral care that we've been giving is less emergency and a bit more chill. And then I'll probably head down to my allotment. I've got an allotment in Old Lane, which is my first year of having the allotment. And
how is that going?
Oh, it's a constant. I love it, but it does feel like a bit of a constant guilt. Thankfully, we've got a corner allotment, so the committee they might be listening to this, but the committee aren't always like watching us for like how high our grass is, etc. But yeah, things are good. We've got some winter squash growing, got far too much kale, and some sunflowers, which are great. But yeah, I need to get down this afternoon and weed if I get some time.
I think it's going to be a nice afternoon as well. So yeah, good luck with all of that. Thank you so much for coming along and telling about all the great work that you're doing. I will put links in the podcast notes that people can check out your podcast, see how to get involved, buy the cookbook. So yeah, thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Hazel.
I loved hearing about the work Keziah is doing with Mafwa Theatre. Have a look at the links in the podcast notes about how you can get involved and maybe even become a trustee. The featured track on this episode is some gorgeous singing by Cecilia, who is Mafwa Theatre's longest standing member and is from Cameroon. Look after each other, Leeds, stay safe and well, and I'll speak to you next time.
Et c'est moi qui l'ai choisi, mon gâteau, elle est comme ça. Et jolie, 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 oh. Jolie, jolie, je ne peux pas la laisser. Et mon frère, joli, c'est moi qui l'ai choisi, oh. C'est moi qui l'ai choisi, je monte le télé comme ça. Jolie, jolie, oh. Jolie, jolie, je ne peux pas la laisser. Et mon chapeau joli, mon brevet joli, mon télé joli, je ne fais pas la liste. Et joli, 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 je ne fais pas la liste. Mon chaise joli, mon coiffure joli. Mon film est joli et je ne fais pas la liste. Et joli, 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 je ne fais pas la liste. Et mon chat si joli, c'est vraiment joli. C'est moi qui l'ai choisi, mon chaussure, elle est comme ça. Et joli, 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 je ne fais pas la liste.